When Xin Lianhua awoke, the world felt staged. The bed beneath her was impossibly soft, layered with embroidered silk that shimmered with every slight movement. Above her, a canopy of gauze drifted like clouds, painted with golden phoenixes mid-flight. Even the air was curated warm, delicate, carrying sandalwood and a faint trace of plum blossoms. Light filtered through carved lattice windows, scattering intricate shadows across the polished floor. Too perfect. All right. This is either a historical set, or I've been reborn. She lifted her hand. Slender fingers. Smooth skin. A jade bracelet rested cool against her wrist. Definitely reborn. Fantastic. Zero preparation. No tutorial. Not even a system guide? Unbelievable. Miss Yuan. A young maid rushed in, nearly stumbling in her haste. Relief flooded her face. You've been unconscious for 2 days. 2 days? That's it? Usually it's 3. Missed opportunity, fate. The maid froze. Not long. Just a flicker of hesitation. Then she helped Lianhua sit up carefully. Miss, how do you feel? I feel fine. Actually, better than fine. This body is surprisingly healthy for someone who's supposed to be a background character. The maid's eyes widened slightly. Not long after, hurried footsteps approached. The door opened, and her family entered. Her father, Yuan Zhengyuan, stepped in first, tall, composed, his presence steady and authoritative. Behind him came her stepmother, graceful and calm, followed by her 2 brothers. The room filled quickly. Concern was real. Immediate. Unhidden. Her father moved closer. You've woken. Her stepmother's voice softened. Does anything hurt? Her eldest brother stood quietly near the side, watchful. Her second brother leaned forward slightly, clearly trying not to look too worried and failing. Lianhua blinked at them. Oh, they actually care. She straightened a bit. I'm fine. Just a little tired. Her father nodded. Do you remember anything? Memory check? Ah, classic. I remember everything. Well, not her life exactly, but I remember mine. A pause. And then, it hit her. Like a page flipping in her mind. Fragments. Scenes. Names. Plotlines. Wait. Her eyes sharpened slightly. Yuan Lianhua. This name. Her fingers tightened subtly around the blanket. No way. No, this is that novel. The one where the Yuan family looks respectable on the outside, but is full of hidden issues. Silence filled the room. Her family heard everything. And I. A sinking realization. And the background character who dies early. Jihao's eyes widened. Jishuan's expression froze for a split second. Her stepmother's hands stilled. Her father remained composed, but very, very still. Lianhua exhaled slowly. Great. Reborn into a side character with a short lifespan. Truly excellent luck. They asked her a few more questions. She answered politely. Calm. Normal. While her thoughts were anything but. Father. Upright, but currently about to be dragged into a financial mess if he doesn't act soon. Jing Yuan's gaze lowered slightly. Stepmother kind, but surrounded by subtle dangers. Her stepmother's fingers curled faintly. Eldest brother, reliable to a fault. Probably hasn't rested properly in days. Jishuan straightened unconsciously. Second brother. She glanced at him. Definitely the type to sneak snacks at night and blame the servants. Jihao almost choked on air. Eventually, her father nodded. You should rest. They all agreed. And quietly left the room. The door slid shut. Silence lingered. Then, they stopped walking. All at once. Jihao turned first, eyes wide. You all heard that, right? No one answered immediately. Jishuan looked at their father. Her stepmother looked at Jingyuan as well. A long pause. Then, Jingyuan nodded. Every word. Jihao ran a hand through his hair. Her mouth didn't move. But we heard her clearly, Jishuan finished. Her stepmother exhaled softly. Her thoughts. Silence. Jihao muttered, she called me a snack thief. You are, Jishuan said calmly. That's not the point. Jingyuan's voice cut through quietly. This matter stays within the family. All of them nodded. Because whatever this was, it had already begun changing things. By evening, Lianhua joined them for dinner. The long table gleamed under warm lantern light. Steam rose from carefully prepared dishes, each one placed with precision. A perfect family scene. If one ignored what was happening beneath it, Lianhua picked up her chopsticks. All right, let's observe. Her gaze moved. Father, upright, respected, but currently sitting on a ticking problem. Jing Yuan's chopsticks paused. If he doesn't deal with that missing silver from the outer state soon, everything collapses and he gets blamed. Silence. And second uncle is definitely involved. That man smiles too much for someone stealing money. Jixuan tightened his grip on his cup. Jihao stared very hard at his bowl. Lianhua continued eating. Honestly, this clan runs on secrets and polite smiles. Her gaze shifted. Eldest brother. She looked at Jixuan. If responsibility had a face, it'd be him. Jixuan kept eating, but also definitely the type who overthinks everything before sleeping. His sleeve lifted slightly to hide his mouth. Probably reviews conversations from 3 days ago before bed. Jihao's shoulders started shaking. Then, second brother. Jihao froze. This one, chaotic energy. He lowered his head instantly. Definitely the type who sneaks out, climbs walls, and gets stuck halfway. Jihao coughed violently. Tea went down wrong. And laughs at serious moments. Jihao bit his lips so hard he almost folded. Lianhua took another bite, then glanced at her stepmother. Stepmother is actually nice. That's refreshing. A small pause. Wait. Her brows furrowed. Oh. Across the table. Everything stilled. She's pregnant. Jihao slowly looked up. Jixuan froze completely. Early stage. She probably doesn't even know yet. Her stepmother's hand moved, just slightly, toward her abdomen. Her father's gaze flickered toward her, then away. Both remained silent. Lianhua kept eating. But that means danger. The tension deepened. That cousin who keeps visiting? Fake concern. Definitely plotting something. Jihao's eyes widened. Jixuan's gaze sharpened. If she gets too close, something will happen. And with a pregnancy? That's bad. Her stepmother's fingers tightened. Her father calmly said, Eat. Everyone obeyed. Lianhua sighed internally. This family really needs better awareness. She sipped her tea. And the cousins don't even get me started. Jihao braced himself. One acts scholarly but visits brothels every other night. Jihao nearly slammed the table. Cough. Really spicy tea, he croaked. Another gambles like he wants to ruin his entire life. Jixuan hid his expression again. And they all pretend to be refined. Amazing acting. Lianhua leaned back slightly. This clan is one disaster away from chaos. Across the table. No one disagreed. That night, Jing Yuan stayed in his study longer. Jixuan quietly began making arrangements. Jihao didn't sneak out. And her stepmother sat alone, hand resting lightly over her abdomen. Meanwhile, Lianhua lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling, completely unaware. This life seems peaceful enough. She turned to her side. If I just mind my business, I might actually survive. Outside, the wind stirred softly, carrying her unspoken words into the hearts of those who needed them most. A week passed, and in that single week, everything shifted. Jing Yuan moved swiftly and silently. What Lianhua had idly thought at the dinner table became threads he pulled with precision. Account books were reviewed. Messengers were sent. Quiet conversations turned into decisive action. By the end of the week, the missing silver was found. The blame was redirected. And second uncle was no longer smiling as often. Meanwhile, the household itself changed. Her stepmother, after days of subtle unease, finally visited a physician. The result? Confirmed. Pregnant. The news spread quietly within the family, but the shock lingered. Jing Yuan stood still for a long moment when he heard it. Not disbelief. Not doubt. But something softer. Care. Relief. Responsibility. Her stepmother sat with one hand resting lightly over her abdomen, still processing. And her brothers. They changed. Especially Jihao. Once known for his restless energy, Jihao now sat in the study hall, staring at a book like it had personally offended him. Why are there so many characters? Jixuan didn't even look up. Because it's a book. Jihao groaned. I'm trying to reform. Then suffer quietly. I hate you. But still. He stayed. Studied. Even if he looked like he might collapse at any moment. As for Lianhua, she stretched lazily in the courtyard. Wow. Everything's resolving itself nicely. She bit into a fruit. This must be what it feels like to be a background character who survives. Then came the invitation. A banquet. Hosted by the Prime Minister. Attended by nobles, officials. and even the emperor himself. The hall shimmered with gold and silk. Lanterns swayed gently above, casting warm light across rows of polished tables. Musicians played softly in the background, their melodies weaving through quiet conversations and measured laughter. Everything was elegant, refined, perfect, and completely full of secrets. The Yuan family entered as one, poised, composed, disciplined, except Lianhua, who looked around with bright curiosity. Wow, so many people pretending to be decent at the same time. Impressive. Jihao immediately lowered his head. Jixuan lifted his sleeve slightly. Their father walked forward like nothing had happened. They took their seats. Wine was poured. Dishes arrived one after another. Lianhua picked up her chopsticks. All right. Let's observe the wildlife. Her gaze drifted. Oh, that official in blue. The man straightened slightly. The one smiling like he's never sinned a day in his life? A nearby noble coughed. Yeah, he's got 2 ledgers. One for the emperor, one for himself. Bold. Risky. Slightly stupid. Jihao's shoulders started shaking. And that one beside him. She squinted slightly. Looks serious, talks about duty all the time. The man lifted his chin proudly. But runs away from marriage proposals like his life depends on it. A pause. Actually, considering how many he's rejected, it might. Jihao bent forward abruptly. Careful, Jixuan murmured calmly. Bone stuck, Jihao muttered. Lianhua continued eating. Oh wow, that noble lady in red. The woman sat straighter instantly. Acts like she could defeat 10 men in battle. A fan snapped open dramatically. But is secretly meeting her lover behind a tea house every 3rd night. The fan froze midair. A servant nearly dropped a tray. And she tells everyone she's too busy for romance. A soft choking sound echoed somewhere behind. Jihao had now completely lowered his head, shoulders shaking violently. Jixuan's teacup paused midair. Even Jingyuan's fingers tightened ever so slightly. Her stepmother pressed her lips together, eyes lowered. Lianhua took another bite unfazed. Oh, there's more. That group over there. She glanced subtly. One gambler. One liar. One pretending to be both but failing miserably. Someone coughed loudly. And that one. Her gaze flicked again. Visits temples very often. The man nodded solemnly at someone. For spiritual reflection. A pause. By reflection, I mean he's reflecting on which pleasure house to visit next. Jihao nearly slammed his forehead into the table. Brother? Lianhua asked, finally noticing. I am deeply moved, Jihao said hoarsely. Across the hall, people were unraveling. Not openly. Never openly. But fans trembled. Hands stiffened. Eyes darted. Because they all heard it. Every word. Every thought. Clear as if spoken beside their ears. Except the ones she spoke about. They remained blissfully unaware. Still smiling. Still proud. Still completely exposed. Lianhua chewed thoughtfully. Honestly, this place is less banquet and more gathering of people with secrets they hope no one finds out. Jixuan finally lowered his head slightly. Even he was struggling now. Then, her gaze lifted. To the highest seat. The emperor. She blinked. Oh, that's the emperor. A pause. He actually looks kind of relaxed. The emperor's fingers paused on his cup. Also definitely the smartest person here. A faint smile formed. And probably already figured out who's guilty of what just by sitting there. The smile deepened. If I were him, I'd just sit back, eat, and let everyone expose themselves. A soft sound escaped him. A quiet, controlled chuckle. Instantly suppressed. But heard. The court froze. Because the emperor was amused. He raised his sleeve slightly, covering his mouth. His shoulders barely moved. But his eyes held unmistakable mirth. Beside him, an attendant lowered his head, pretending not to notice. But even his lips twitched. The emperor spoke calmly, voice smooth. This banquet is quite enlightening. A subtle emphasis. Orders were passed quietly. Investigations would begin. Carefully. Precisely. At the UN table. No one dared look up. Jihao was shaking so hard it looked like he might fall off his seat. Jixuan had fully surrendered to hiding behind his sleeve. Jingyuan remained composed, but had not taken a bite in a while. Her stepmother sipped tea very slowly, eyes lowered. And Lianhua? Still eating. Still thinking. Honestly, best banquet ever. She nodded slightly. Free food and entertainment? Incredible. Jihao made a strangled noise. I should attend more of these. Outside, the lanterns swayed. The music continued. But inside, reputations cracked. Secrets spread. And laughter, barely contained, echoed silently across the hall. And at the center of it all was a girl who simply thought she was enjoying dinner. The banquet ended with music and polite smiles. But the night did not end there. By the time the last lantern dimmed, whispers had already taken root. Not loud, not chaotic, just everywhere. The emperor's quiet hand. At dawn, the palace moved. Not dramatically, not publicly, but precisely. Names were listed. Accounts were reviewed. People were watched. The emperor did not shout. He did not accuse. He simply knew where to look. And that was enough. The official in blue, the one with 2 ledgers, was summoned. His face still carried that same confident smile, until both ledgers were placed in front of him, one by one, side by side. His hands trembled. He tried to speak, but no one needed explanations anymore. The devout official, who frequented temples, found his routes suddenly restricted. His wife, upon hearing certain rumors, became far more attentive. Strange, she said sweetly one evening, blocking the doorway. You've been very devoted lately. He never visited those temples again. As for the lady in red, the one who acted like a warrior among women, her world shifted, quietly. At first, she denied it. Of course she did. She always had. I have no time for such nonsense, she declared. But the whispers were too specific, too accurate, too close. And the man, the one she met behind the tea house, finally stepped forward. Not in secret, not in shadows, but in daylight. I will marry you, he said. No hesitation, no fear. The same boldness she had always hidden behind her pride. For once, she didn't argue, didn't deflect, didn't act strong. She simply lowered her gaze. Then come properly. The engagement was announced within days. And, for the first time, she stopped pretending she didn't care. The official who avoided marriage like a plague could not escape as easily. Because what lingered most from that night was not the accusations, but the laughter. The quiet, suppressed laughter of others. The way people looked at him, not with respect, but with knowing amusement. It unsettled him, more than anger ever could. Days passed. Then, for the first time in years, he accepted a meeting, then another, and another. He still hesitated, still paused, still found excuses. But he no longer ran. Back in the UN residence, peace returned. On the surface, Jing Yuan received quiet reports, each one aligning with what he had already heard. Through his daughter's unspoken words, he did not question it anymore. He simply acted, carefully, decisively. Her stepmother moved more gently now, more aware, more protected. Servants were changed, visits were limited, and no cousin was allowed near her without reason. Her hand often rested over her abdomen, a silent acknowledgement of something precious. Jixuan remained steady, but sharper, faster to act, more watchful. And Jihao was suffering. He sat in the study again, book open, eyes tired. Why is this character so complicated? Jixuan didn't look up. Because it's not a snack. Jihao glared weakly. I used to be happy. You were also useless. That hurts. But still. He turned the page. Meanwhile, Lianhua stretched in the courtyard, completely unaware. Wow, things have been really peaceful lately. She bit into a pastry. No drama. No chaos. Everyone behaving. A pause. Did the world fix itself while I wasn't looking? Spring settled gently over the garden, petals drifting like whispers across the air. The flower viewing gathering was lively yet refined, young ladies in silk robes moving gracefully beneath blooming trees, their laughter soft, their smiles measured. Xin Lianhua walked beside her stepmother, calm and observant. Her gaze wandered, until it landed on a familiar figure. Oh? She blinked lightly. That's Su Yanqing. The young lady in blue stood quietly among her companions, her presence gentle, her posture elegant but unassuming. Yanqing lowered her gaze politely. She's even prettier up close. A pause. Then, oh right, she has a crush on my eldest brother. Silence. Immediate. Yanqing froze. Her fan slipped slightly in her grip. Color rushed to her cheeks so fast it was impossible to hide. The girls beside her turned, first to her, then, slowly, toward Lianhua. But Lianhua was simply standing there. Calm, composed, her lips unmoving. Unfortunately, in the original story, she ended up marrying someone else. Yanqing's fingers tightened, and it didn't end well at all. The surrounding girls grew quieter. Such a waste. Lianhua sighed inwardly. Honestly, she's perfect for Big Brother. Yanqing's face turned completely red. Her fan lifted instantly, hiding half her face, but not the embarrassment burning through her ears. Gentle, sensible, not fake. Lianhua nodded faintly to herself. Big Brother would definitely like her. A soft choking sound came from one of the girls nearby. Another quickly looked away. Lianhua continued, completely unaware. Maybe I should help them meet. A pause. Yeah, I could be a matchmaker. Yanqing nearly dropped her fan. I just need to create a natural situation, not too obvious. Lianhua's eyes brightened slightly. Oh, maybe a chance encounter in the garden? Or invite her during a family visit. The girls around them were now very still, very quiet. Because they were all listening. If this works, I might actually change her fate. Yanqing couldn't even lift her head anymore. Madame Yuan stood beside Lianhua, composed as ever. But her gaze lingered briefly on Su Yanqing. Thoughtful, calculating. Because unlike Lianhua, she understood the weight of every word. The group moved to a shaded pavilion where tea was served delicately. Porcelain cups clinked softly. Steam curled into the air. Lianhua sat comfortably. This is nice. Her gaze drifted again. And landed on two familiar figures. Oh. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Huarong and Lin Xia. The two young ladies sat side by side. Perfectly composed. Perfectly friendly. On the surface, they looked close. Xia smiled gently at Huarong. Huarong returned it effortlessly. Too close. A pause. Because Huarong absolutely loathes her. Xia's smile faltered. The girls nearby stiffened. Huarong remained smiling. Because she heard nothing. She thinks Xia is clingy, naive, and only useful for connections. Xia slowly lowered her cup. Her fingers trembled slightly. Calls her dead weight in her mind too. A quiet gasp escaped someone behind. Xia leaned back. Just slightly. Distance. And she's planning to drop her once she finds better allies. That was enough. Xia's eyes flickered. Hurt. Real. But she didn't speak. Didn't confront. Because she didn't understand where those words were coming from. Her gaze drifted. Uncertain. Until it landed on Lianhua, who was calmly sipping tea. Not speaking. Not reacting. Her lips. Still. Xia swallowed softly. Then, without a word, she shifted her seat. Just slightly. Away from Huarong. The movement was small, but unmistakable. Around them, the other young ladies noticed. They said nothing, but one by one, they adjusted. Subtle, careful, creating space, not speaking to Huarong as much, not engaging as before. Huarong's smile remained perfect, but her eyes flickered. Because something had changed, and she didn't know why, didn't know how. Only that people were looking at her differently, and she couldn't stop it. Meanwhile, Lianhua took another sip of tea, completely unaware. This gathering is actually pretty peaceful. A petal landed softly on the table. Nice weather, nice view. Across from her, Yanqing still couldn't meet anyone's eyes. Xia sat quietly, distant now. And Huarong smiled alone. For the first time. Without anyone truly beside her. And at the center of it all, Lianhua simply thought, maybe I really am good at this whole background character thing. The garden had grown quieter. Petals drifted lazily through the air, settling along the stone paths like soft whispers of spring. Yuan Lianhua stepped away from the pavilion, hands clasped behind her back. I'll take a walk, mother. I'll be back soon. Madame Yuan smiled gently. Don't wander too far. I won't. Probably. The breeze brushed against her sleeves as she walked. Nice weather, clear skies, peaceful atmosphere. A pause. Suspiciously peaceful. Then, she saw him. Beneath a flowering tree sat a man dressed in dark robes. Still. Composed. Like a blade sheathed but never dull. Lianhua stopped. Oh. Her thoughts slowed, then spiraled. How is that even allowed? General Xing Jianrui stilled slightly. He looks like he walked straight out of a painting. His gaze shifted subtly and landed on her. She stood at a distance, quiet, smiling faintly, her lips not moving. No, seriously, that's unfair. A faint warmth crept up his neck. Those shoulders. Her eyes traced his form, admiring, unfiltered. That posture, that presence. He looked away briefly, then back again. He's so solid. Her breath caught slightly. If he held someone. A pause. No focus. But she didn't. What would it feel like to be in those arms? John Rue's ears turned red. Warm? Firm? Safe? He shifted slightly, suddenly very aware of himself. I'm imagining too much. She pressed her lips together faintly, but her thoughts kept going. And his lips. He froze. What would they feel like? His breath hitched. They look firm. A pause. Probably warm too. He turned his head away completely this time. If he leaned closer. No, he muttered under his breath, almost inaudible. I'd probably forget how to breathe. His hand tightened slightly against his sleeve. Lianhua blinked, then shook her head internally. What am I even thinking? But then, those eyes. She looked again. They really do look like stars. John Rue glanced back despite himself. Cold at first glance. She tilted her head slightly. But if he looked at someone seriously, a soft breath escaped her. I'd melt. His heart skipped. Completely melt. A pause. My knees would probably give out too. He inhaled sharply, then steadied himself. This was new. He had heard praise before. Many times. But this was different. Unfiltered. Honest. Bold. Yet only in silence. I like him. His fingers stilled. He frowned slightly. Not in displeasure, but in confusion. Who is she? His gaze sharpened. She stood there like any noble lady. Proper, composed. Yet her thoughts were anything but restrained. Lianhua sighed softly. He's really eye candy. John Rue blinked. The kind you want to hide away so no one else can see. His ears burned again. If I could, I'd keep him somewhere safe and just admire him myself. A pause. But that's impossible. Her expression softened. Too many people like him. Too many would want to marry him. John Rue's gaze darkened slightly. But he's always on the battlefield. The warmth in her thoughts faded. So nothing ever really happens. A flicker of memory surfaced. And suddenly, her mood shifted. Wait. Her brows furrowed slightly. In the story, John Rue straightened subtly. He gets injured in the next war. His entire body stilled. Badly. The air seemed to tighten. It was from that campaign against the western borders. His gaze snapped toward her. Sharp. Focused. And someone close to him. Her fingers tightened slightly behind her back. Someone he trusted. A pause. Betrayed him. John Rue's breath slowed. Controlled. But heavy. Lianhua looked down slightly. That's why he was hurt so badly. A quiet ache filled her chest. That's so unfair. Her voice softened in her mind. He deserves better. A pause. If only I could tell him. Her gaze lifted again, briefly meeting his direction without realizing. Be careful. His heart tightened. Protect yourself. His fingers curled slightly. Don't trust everyone behind you. Silence stretched. Then, she looked away. But how would I even say that? A faint sigh escaped her. We don't even know each other. She turned, slowly walking away. Her steps light, but her thoughts heavy. I just hope he'll be safe. John Rue stood abruptly, then stopped, watching her retreating figure, petals falling between them. That night, the Yuan estate was quiet. Too quiet. Yuan Lianhua lay on her bed, staring at the canopy above her. She turned to one side, then the other, then back again. Why can't I sleep? Oh right. Her face flushed faintly in the dark. General Xing John Rue. She buried half her face into her pillow. That face, those shoulders, that presence. She groaned softly. Focus. I have important things to think about. Like, how to get closer to him. Her eyes opened again. Not obvious. Subtle. Natural. She frowned slightly. Maybe another accidental meeting? A beat. Or I could just faint in front of him. She paused. No, too dramatic. Another pause. But effective. She turned again, hugging her pillow. Also, I need to matchmake Big Brother and Su Yanqing. Her expression turned thoughtful. That's important. A small nod. Yes. Romance for others first. Then mine. Wait, mine? Her face heated again. No, 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 calm down. She exhaled slowly. Step 1. Get them to meet. Step 2. Observe chemistry. Step 3. Pretend I had nothing to do with it. A satisfied hum escaped her. Perfect plan. Her thoughts slowly softened. And before she knew it, she fell asleep. The next morning, Miss, Lianhua stirred. Miss, wake up. She blinked groggily as her maid leaned over her, clearly flustered. What is it? She mumbled. There's a visitor. Lianhua yawned slightly. For me. The maid nodded quickly, then paused. Her cheeks flushed. Yes, and he's already with the master and madam. Lianhua frowned slightly. Who is it? The maid hesitated, then said in a hushed voice. The young general. Silence. Then, Lianhua shot upright. What? Her heart skipped. The young general. She scrambled out of bed. Why didn't you say so earlier? I just did, miss. Water. Clothes. Hurry. The room burst into motion. As her maid helped her wash and dress, Lianhua's thoughts began racing again. Why is he here? Her reflection stared back at her, slightly flushed. Did something happen? A pause. Her heart thumped louder. No, no, don't assume. A smaller voice whispered. But what if? Her maid smiled faintly, quickly hiding it as she lowered her head. Because she heard everything. Lianhua adjusted her sleeves. I get to see him again. Her lips curved slightly. And maybe hear his voice properly this time. The maid's shoulders shook faintly. Miss, you're ready. Lianhua took a breath, then stepped out. At the main hall, the atmosphere inside was calm, refined. Yuan Jingyuan sat at the head, composed as ever. Madame Yuan beside him, graceful. And across from them, General Xingjian Rui. Lianhua stepped in, and her thoughts exploded. Oh my. She stopped mid-step. How is he even more handsome in daylight? Jihao, who had just entered from the side, nearly turned away instantly. Jixuan lowered his gaze. Madame Yuan pressed her lips together. Lianhua bowed slightly. Father. Mother. Her eyes flicked, just for a second, toward Zhan Rui. That face. That posture. That aura. Her heart skipped again. This is illegal. Absolutely illegal. Zhan Rui remained seated. Calm. Composed. Except the faint red at his ears. Yuan Jingyuan spoke. Lianhua, come. This is General Xingjian Rui. As if I don't know. She stepped forward. Zhan Rui stood. Tall. Straight. Then bowed slightly. Miss Yuan. Lianhua returned the gesture. Her heart pounding. Then, he spoke again. I came today to return this. He extended his hand. A jade bracelet rested on his palm. I believe it slipped from your wrist yesterday during the flower viewing. You left before I could return it. Lianhua blinked. Oh. Her cheeks warmed. I didn't even notice. She reached out, taking the bracelet. Their fingers nearly brushed. Her thoughts spiraled again. His voice. A pause. It's so deep, calm, soothing. Jihao turned away completely now. I want to keep hearing him talk. Madame Yuan lowered her gaze. And his hands. Lianhua stared briefly at his hand. They're so big. Zhan Rui froze. Strong too. I want to hold them. Jixuan coughed softly into his sleeve. The servants nearby kept their heads down, shoulders trembling. Zhan Rui's ears turned completely red. Lianhua blinked. General, are you all right? He straightened instantly. The tea is warm. A pause. It made me slightly heated. Silence. Then, Jihao's shoulders shook violently. Jixuan looked down. Madame Yuan turned slightly toward her husband. Eyes calm, but clearly holding back laughter. Even Yuan Jingyuan remained composed, but his gaze flickered, because his thoughts were anything but calm. This man heard everything, and yet, he stayed composed, respectful, only his ears betraying him. Meanwhile, Lianhua smiled softly. Even flustered, he looks good. Zhan Rui looked away again. And, for the first time, the great general of the battlefield felt like retreating. Not from war, but from a single girl, who never said a word, and yet, left him completely defenseless. Yuan Lianhua held the jade bracelet carefully in her hands. Thank you, General, she said sincerely, her voice soft and proper. Her expression was composed, graceful, perfectly befitting a noble lady. Her thoughts were not, thank you? That's it? That's all I can say? He personally came all the way here, returned it himself, stood right in front of me, and I just said thank you like a background extra? Why am I like this? Jihao had already turned away, shoulders trembling. Jixuan stared very intently at nothing. Madame Yuan lowered her gaze, lips pressed together. Meanwhile, Zhang Rui remained calm, or appeared to be. He turned toward Zheng Yuan. From his sleeve, he retrieved a finely crafted invitation. I came today not only to return the bracelet, he said evenly, but also to deliver this. He presented it respectfully. My grandfather will be celebrating his 60th birthday. He wishes to invite the Yuan family. The room shifted subtly. Zheng Yuan accepted the invitation, scanning it briefly. A great honor, he said. Zhang Rui nodded once. And there are also matters I wish to discuss with Master Yuan. His tone remained steady, professional, measured. But just for a moment, his gaze flickered toward Lianhua, then away. He looked at me. He looked at me. Stay calm. Stay calm. Do not combust in front of everyone. Her fingers tightened slightly around the bracelet. Zheng Yuan stood. Then let us speak in the study. He turned to the servants. Prepare lunch. Our guest will stay. As thanks for returning the bracelet, Zhang Rui inclined his head. Much appreciated. And that simple nod destroyed whatever composure Lianhua had left. He's staying. He's actually staying. We're going to eat together. At the same table. In broad daylight. What do I do? Her face remained calm. But her thoughts. What if I faint? No, don't faint. Actually fainting into his arms at lunch sounds even more embarrassing. No focus. Jihao nearly stumbled as he turned away completely. I get to sit across from him? Or beside him? Wait. Where will I sit? Does seating matter? It definitely matters. Jixuan pressed his fingers lightly against his temple. What if he talks to me? What if he doesn't talk to me? Which one is worse? Madame Yuan slowly lifted her teacup, hiding the faint curve of her lips. I need to say something meaningful, something calm, something intelligent. Also, I need to warn him. Her thoughts softened slightly. About the war, the betrayal. Then immediately. How do I even bring that up? Hello, General. Please don't get stabbed by someone behind you during lunch. Absolutely not. Jihao is now fully facing the wall. Maybe I can hint? No, I'll sound suspicious. Maybe casually? Is there a casual way to talk about betrayal over lunch? There is not. Jixuan coughed softly. Or I could just follow him around and stare intensely until he understands. Yes. That will definitely not get me thrown out of my own house. The servants behind them trembled silently. Even the usually composed Madame Yuan had to look away. Meanwhile, Zhang Rui walked beside Zheng Yuan toward the study. His expression calm, but his ears still red, because he heard every word, every single word. The study was still, wrapped in quiet authority. A faint trail of incense drifted between them as Zheng Yuan gestured toward the seat across his desk. General Xing, please. Zhang Rui inclined his head and sat, posture straight, composed, yet his eyes carried something unsettled. Jing Yuan noticed immediately. What is it, he asked calmly, that you wish to discuss? Zhang Rui did not answer at once. Then, yesterday at the flower viewing. Jing Yuan's gaze sharpened slightly. I heard Miss Yuan, Zhang Rui said, measured. But she did not speak. A pause. Her thoughts were clear, as if spoken aloud. Jing Yuan exhaled softly. Not surprised. Not anymore. You are not mistaken, he said. A brief silence followed before Jing Yuan continued, this time more deliberately. I know you heard her a while ago, he said, and that made Zhang Rui blush and nodded. This did not begin yesterday. Zhang Rui's attention sharpened. It started 2 weeks ago, Jing Yuan said. When my daughter regained consciousness after her illness. That was the first time we heard her thoughts. Zhang Rui remained still, listening closely. She spoke then, Jing Yuan continued, about matters within our family. Things she had no way of knowing. His tone grew colder. Hidden dealings. Missing funds. People involved behind the scenes. A brief pause. She also mentioned my wife's condition. Zhang Rui's gaze flickered. She said it casually in her mind, Jing Yuan added, as if it were obvious. A quieter note entered his voice. And yet, We had not confirmed it at that time. Silence lingered. It was only later, he said, that everything proved true. John Rui absorbed this. Then Jing Yuan continued. Last week, during the Prime Minister's banquet. A faint shift in the air. We heard her again. John Rui nodded slightly. I attended that banquet, he said. Then you must have noticed, Jing Yuan replied, how the atmosphere changed afterward. John Rui's gaze sharpened. I was outside, and when I came in, the atmosphere seemed different. Jing Yuan folded his hands. I would wager, he said evenly, that His Majesty himself heard her. As well as the other guests. John Rui did not refute it. Because by the next day, Jing Yuan continued, investigations had already begun. His tone remained calm, but carried weight. Officials who had been acting improperly were apprehended. A few were removed from their posts. Others corrected themselves rather quickly. A faint, almost dry note surfaced. Fear is an effective motivator when truth arrives uninvited. John Rui almost smiled. Jing Yuan leaned back slightly. All of this, he said, from a young girl who simply thinks. Silence followed. Then, John Rui spoke again. Yesterday at the flower viewing. He chose his words carefully. I experienced it myself. A pause. She spoke about people, their behavior, their hidden intentions. Another pause. And then, his expression grew serious. She mentioned a war. Jing Yuan's gaze locked onto him. That I would be injured. The air tightened. That someone close to me would betray me, John Rui continued. And that it would happen on the battlefield. He said nothing more. Nothing about her admiration. Nothing about her thoughts of him. He felt embarrassed. Jing Yuan held his gaze. Then you understand why I take her words seriously. John Rui nodded once. I do. Jing Yuan's expression hardened slightly. Everything she has said so far has come to pass. She speaks as if she already knows the outcome. John Rui exhaled slowly. She refers to an original story, he said. Jing Yuan nodded. She does. Silence settled again. We believe, Jing Yuan continued, that her illness changed something. She speaks as if recalling events rather than predicting them. John Rui did not question it, because it aligned too well. And yet, Jing Yuan added, she means no harm. Everything she has revealed has only protected others. A brief breath. So we chose to remain silent. John Rui inclined his head. I understand. Jing Yuan leaned forward slightly. If what she said about you is true. His gaze sharpened. You must act. John Rui's expression turned resolute. Investigate those closest to you. Quietly. Carefully. Trust no one fully. Another pause. Especially those behind you. John Rui's eyes darkened. I will. Jing Yuan studied him for a moment. Then added calmly. My daughter is rather fond of you. Silence. John Rui froze, just slightly. I see. She means no disrespect, Jing Yuan said. Her thoughts are simply unguarded. I trust you will not take offense. John Rui looked away briefly. I am not offended. He said, but his ears are turning red. Not even close. Jing Yuan nodded once. Good. Then, as if returning to ordinary matters. We will be having lunch shortly. John Rui straightened. You may wish to prepare yourself. A faint crease formed on his brow. Prepare? Jing Yuan's tone turned just slightly dry. My daughter tends to think more during meals. And today, you are present. Understanding settled. John Rui exhaled quietly. I will guide the conversation, Jing Yuan added. To direct her thoughts. Particularly regarding the war. John Rui nodded. Understood. Though, Jing Yuan added calmly, control will be limited. A faint glint of amusement flickered in his eyes. Once she begins, she rarely stops. John Rui almost smiled. Almost. I will be ready. Outside. Preparations for lunch were nearly complete. And somewhere not far away, Yuan Lianhua adjusted her sleeves, completely unaware that the truth she carried in silence had already begun to reshape the world around her. Lunch was served with unusual liveliness in the Yuan estate. Servants moved swiftly, placing dish after dish across the long table, steamed fish glazed with sauce, tender braised pork, sautéed greens, and fragrant rice. The air carried warmth, but the atmosphere among the family held something else entirely. Anticipation. Yuan Lianhua took her seat, posture elegant, expression calm. Inside, she was anything but. Okay, breathe. Just eat normally. It's just lunch. Just a normal lunch. Then she noticed. General Xingjianrui sat beside her. Her mind exploded. Why is he sitting next to me? He's so close, too close. Her back straightened instinctively as she felt his presence beside her, steady and warm. He smells nice. What is that scent? It's addicting. Why is it so distracting? Her face began to heat up. I'm blushing. I'm definitely blushing. Don't panic. Don't panic. Just eat. She picked up her chopsticks carefully, moving with unnatural precision. If I choke right now, I will disappear from this world out of embarrassment. Across the table, Jihao had already lowered his head, shoulders shaking. He didn't even try to hide it. My heart is beating so loudly. It wants to jump out from my chest. Can he hear it? He can't hear it, right? Please tell me he can't hear it. Jihao covered his mouth, clearly entertained. General Xing, he suddenly said with a grin, to achieve such a position at such a young age, truly admirable. Zhang Rui inclined his head slightly. Jihao continued, clearly enjoying himself. People must praise you endlessly. Strength, talent, status, it's rare. His eyes flickered toward Lianhua, who was still carefully eating like her life depended on it. Don't look at him. Don't look at him. If I look at him, I'm done. Jihao bit his lip, barely holding back laughter. And with such achievements, he added casually, surely there are also personal matters to consider? Lianhua froze mid-bite. What is he doing? Jihao smiled wider. Is the general already seeing someone? Or perhaps, interested in someone? Lianhua's grip tightened. Please say no. Please say no. Please say no. Zhang Rui answered calmly. But his ears are betraying him. I am not currently in any relationship. Lianhua's heart settled. Just a little. Then. But I have recently begun to take interest in someone. Her brain short-circuited. What? Who? Since when? Her thoughts scrambled wildly. Wait. Was there someone in the story? I don't remember anyone. Did I forget? Did I skip something? What chapter is it? Jihao completely turned away now, shoulders shaking harder. Who is it? Who is it? Why do I feel like this is important? This is not important. This is very important. Her face grew warmer, her movements stiff. Why do I feel weird hearing that? Jihao finally let out a quiet laugh, unable to hold it anymore. Lianhua forced herself to continue eating. Focus. Eat. Be normal. You are calm. You are composed. You are absolutely not panicking inside. Yuan Jingyuan calmly redirected the conversation. I have heard reports from the western borders. The tone shifted. Zhang Rui straightened slightly. There have been unusual movements, Jingyuan continued. Not yet war, but not peaceful either. Zhang Rui nodded. We have observed the same. Lianhua's thoughts shifted with the topic. Western borders. Her expression remained calm, but her mind grew serious. That's where it starts. Zhang Rui stilled slightly. That campaign, the one where he gets injured. Her fingers tightened around her chopsticks. Because of someone close to him. She searched her memory. What was the name? Then, Guanizha. Zhang Rui's grip tightened subtly. His deputy commander. Always beside him. Trusted. Lianhua's heart sank slightly. But he's the one who betrays him. She glanced sideways at Zhang Rui, her thoughts filled with urgency. I need to tell him. Her lips parted. General. Everyone paused. It was the first time she spoke directly. You should remain alert at all times. Her voice was soft but steady. Especially those around you. Then she lowered her gaze and continued eating as if nothing had happened. But her thoughts betrayed her. In her mind, she's pulling her hair with embarrassment. I hope he doesn't find me intrusive. Zhang Rui looked at her. Thank you, he said quietly. I will. And he meant it. Across the table, Jingyuan remained composed, though his eyes had already taken in everything. Jihao leaned back slightly, still amused, clearly enjoying every moment of his sister's internal chaos. The conversation smoothly shifted again, guided carefully away from dangerous ground. But the warning had already been delivered. And, beside Lianhua, Zhang Rui sat silently, listening not just to words, but to everything she could not say aloud. The 60th birthday banquet unfolded like a painted dream, grand, dazzling, and filled with power. And right at the center of it, Yuan Lianhua, looking like she had stepped out of a spring painting. Her mint-green hanfu flowed like soft jade under sunlight, layered and airy, embroidered with faint lotus blooms that shimmered when she moved. A delicate jade pin rested in her hair, holding her half-up hairstyle in elegant place, while the rest cascaded smoothly down her back. She looked serene, untouchable, graceful. Inside her head, a storm. Don't trip. Don't trip. Don't trip. If I trip in front of everyone, I will simply pass away on the spot. Inside the carriage, calm on the outside, absolute chaos inside. Her father sat upright, composed. Her stepmother beside him, one hand resting lightly over her slightly rounded belly, her expression soft and peaceful. Across from them, Lianhua sat perfectly straight. This is fine. Everything is fine. I am calm. I am elegance. I am lying to myself. Jihao's shoulders were already shaking. What if there are a lot of people? Of course there are a lot of people. Why wouldn't there be? It's a grand banquet. Ji Xuan stared out the window like his life depended on it. What if I do something embarrassing? No, not what if, when. Jihao turned away completely, silently dying. What if I accidentally think about him too much? Her face heated instantly. No. Stop. Priorities. Survival first. Admiration later. Jihao bit his sleeve. But also, what if he looks really good today? Jihao nearly collapsed. The Xing residence was magnificent. Lanterns glowed like stars, banners danced in the breeze, and guards stood like statues of iron. The Yuan family entered with proper decorum, presenting their gifts before being led into the grand hall. And the moment Lianhua stepped inside, her brain went feral. Wow, so many people. Why are there so many important people in one place? They sat down and her eyes immediately darted across the hall. Oh no. Characters. Characters everywhere. This is not good. Her gaze landed on one noble lady. That's noble lady Yong. The woman sat elegantly, smiling softly. She likes General Xing. Of course she does. Everyone likes him. But she's not innocent. She already tried arranging a matchmaker behind the scenes. Ji Xuan's expression stiffened slightly. Smiling like a lotus, but scheming like a strategist. Honestly, I kind of want to slap her. Jihao folded in half. No. Violence is not proper. I am gentle. I am refined. A pause. Still very slappable. Jihao almost made a sound. Her gaze snapped elsewhere. Oh great. Another one. Lady Ming. A lady with an innocent face sat quietly nearby. She looks harmless. She is not harmless. She's worse. Ji Xuan lowered his gaze. Sweet face, rotten core. Also likes General Xing. These women are multiplying like mushrooms after rain. Jihao shook silently. Why is everyone targeting him? Is there a sign-up sheet I missed? Nearby guests began lowering their heads, shoulders trembling. Then, Lianhua looked forward and froze internally. Oh, the emperor, the empress, and the little crown prince. Her heart melted instantly. He's so small, so round, so cute. The crown prince stiffened. I want to pinch his cheeks. The empress froze. The emperor's lips twitched. No. Control yourself. That is a royal cheek. You cannot pinch royal cheeks. The crown prince clutched his sleeve. Then, everything changed. Lianhua's thoughts shifted and dropped like thunder. Wait. The entire hall stilled. This is that banquet. Her fingers tightened. There are assassins here today. Everything stopped. Utensils midair. Breaths held. Eyes widened. They're targeting the empress. The empress froze completely. And the crown prince. The emperor's gaze turned cold. The crown prince looked around, confused but tense. Across the hall, those who had once heard her before recognized it instantly. And this time, they were not just amused. They were alert. Lianhua continued eating, completely unaware. This is bad. This is really bad. Why is this happening today of all days? She sighed internally. I want to help. Her gaze dropped to her hands. But I'm just a weak young lady with 0 combat skills, 0 strength, and absolutely no ability to fight assassins. Jihao buried his face. I would probably trip before even reaching them. Ji Xuan closed his eyes briefly. This is tragic. Meanwhile, at the head of the hall, Grandfather Xing had gone very still. His smile remained, but his eyes flickered. He had heard everything. Delight, shock, alarm, all at once. Slowly, he turned his gaze toward the emperor. Their eyes met. No words were exchanged. None were needed. The emperor gave the faintest nod. And in that instant, silent orders were issued. Guards shifted. Hidden shadows moved. Eyes sharpened across the hall. The banquet continued, as if nothing had happened. But beneath it, the hunt had begun. Meanwhile, Lianhua was still spiraling. Okay, stay calm. Eat food. Pretend nothing is happening. Everything is definitely happening. Then, her thoughts flipped again. Wait. Her eyes scanned the hall. Where is he? A pause. I haven't seen General Xing yet. Her heart skipped. Did he not come? That's impossible. It's his grandfather's birthday. He has to be here. Her thoughts escalated. What if he makes a dramatic entrance? Like walking in late with wind behind him. Jihao is shaking uncontrollably. He's probably dressed even better today. Formal robes. Maybe darker colors. Maybe even more handsome. Across the hall, Zhangrui paused mid-step. His ears turned red. He already looks good normally, so today? Dangerous. Extremely dangerous. This should be illegal. Jihao nearly collapsed. If he stands near me again, I will not survive this banquet. Meanwhile, guards silently closed in on hidden threats. Assassins were already being identified. Movements were intercepted before they began. Yuan Lianhua lowered her gaze to her plate again. Outwardly calm. Internally spiraling. Okay, think. There are assassins. Real assassins. Not background extras. Actual killers. Her fingers tightened slightly around her chopsticks. What am I supposed to do? Throw a dumpling at them? Trip them with my sleeve? I will die before they do. Jihao pressed his lips together, shoulders trembling again. This is serious. Focus. Protect the Empress. Protect the Crown Prince. But how? How? She slowly lifted her head. And then froze. Her eyes landed on a group of servants moving along the side. One of them. Wait. Her mind clicked. That servant. Her breath hitched. She's the one. Everything in her head went louder. She's the one who poisons the Crown Prince's food. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Oh no, oh no, oh no. This is bad. What do I do? What do I do? Around her, those who could hear her, went completely still. Jing Yuan's gaze sharpened. Jixuan's hand tightened slightly. Jihao stopped breathing. I can't just shout there's poison like a madwoman. Her eyes started. Think. Use your brain. Before she could spiral further. Movement. Guards. They closed in. Swift. Silent. Precise. The servant stiffened. Panic flashed across her face. The tray in her hands. Shattered. Porcelain hit the ground with a sharp crack. Gasps echoed faintly across the hall. The guards seized her immediately. No hesitation. No delay. Lianhua's heart pounded wildly. What just happened? She stared, frozen. Did they wait, did someone? Her thoughts stumbled. But before she could process, the Emperor spoke. Continue. His voice was calm. Steady. Unshaken. As if nothing had happened. The music resumed. Voices returned. The banquet continued. But beneath it, everything had changed. Lianhua slowly lowered her gaze again. That was terrifying. I almost had a heart attack. I am too young for this kind of stress. Jihao finally exhaled. Then, movement at the front. Lianhua looked up. And froze again. Zhangrui. Walking toward the Emperor. Calm. Straight-backed. Imposing. He leaned slightly, speaking quietly. The Emperor listened. Then smiled. And nodded. Lianhua's brain stopped functioning. Oh no. Her heart. Oh no. Her face heated instantly. He's here. He's actually here. Her thoughts spiraled violently. Why does he look even better today? This is unfair. This is completely unfair. Nearby, Jihao turned away immediately. He's glowing. Why is he glowing? Is that allowed? Jixuan lowered his head, lips pressed tight. That outfit, those shoulders, that face. A soft, almost dreamy sigh slipped through her thoughts. I'm melting. No. I have already melted. I am now a puddle on the floor. Several listeners nearly choked. The Emperor's smile widened slightly. Zhangrui froze for a fraction of a second. His ears turning visibly red. He's so breathtaking. Every angle is perfect. This should be illegal. Someone arrest him. A quiet cough escaped from one of the officials. The Emperor glanced sideways, then said casually, just loud enough. General Xing seems quite warm today. A few nearby nobles lowered their heads quickly. Zhangrui straightened. The hall is heated, Your Majesty. His tone was steady. His ears were not. The Emperor hummed in amusement. Lianhua, completely unaware, continued spiraling. If he looks at me right now, I will evaporate. Jihao covered his face. Then, her attention shifted again. Oh! Her gaze landed on a young lady seated not far from the Empress. Graceful, elegant, refined. That must be the female lead. Liu Yanxi, the Empress's cousin. Lianhua observed quietly. She's really pretty. Like, really pretty. Soft but dignified. She and the male lead would look good together. Jixuan subtly glanced in that direction. And the male lead Liang Ziyun, right? General's cousin. He's probably handsome too. But not as handsome as General Xing. Jihao nearly collapsed again. Not even close. General Xing wins 100%. No competition. Absolute victory. Zhang Rui's grip tightened slightly. The emperor took a slow sip of tea, clearly entertained. Lianhua leaned slightly as she continued observing. But she needs to be careful. The tone shifted. Jixuan's expression sharpened. There's that other girl. Her gaze moved. There. Han Merong. A delicate-looking young lady sat nearby, smiling sweetly. Looks harmless. She is not harmless. Jihao froze again. Classic green tea behavior. Pretends to be gentle, but actually stirring trouble behind the scenes. Several nearby listeners stiffened. She's going to try and create misunderstandings between Liu Yanxi and Liang Ziyun. The Empress's gaze flickered subtly. Fake tears, innocent voice, hidden schemes. Very advanced level. Jihao whispered under his breath. Advanced level? Jixuan elbowed him lightly. Lianhua continued, completely absorbed. Honestly, if she tries anything, I might actually lose it. No. Calm. Elegant. I am calm. Another pause. I am not calm. Jihao gave up and leaned on the table. Across the hall, the emperor's eyes gleamed. The empress sat straighter. And quiet, unseen adjustments were already being made. Because once again, Yuan Lianhua, without realizing it, had exposed danger, saved lives, revealed schemes, and caused an entire hall of powerful people to listen very, very carefully to every single thought she had. Yuan Lianhua picked up another bite of food, her expression calm, almost absent-minded. Inside, her thoughts kept spilling like an overturned basket. All right, crisis number 1 handled. I think. Hopefully. Probably. Maybe? She chewed slowly. Now what else was supposed to happen tonight? Her gaze drifted again and landed on Han Merong. The young lady was still smiling sweetly, posture elegant, eyes soft and gentle. Lianhua's thoughts sharpened. Right. This one is worse than I thought. Nearby, listeners stiffened. Jihao slowly raised his head again. She's planning something tonight. Across the hall, the Empress's fingers stilled slightly. She's going to drug Liang Ziyun. Not far away, Liang Ziyun, who had just entered the hall quietly, froze. Liu Yanxi, beside him, blinked in confusion. Spiked drink. Classic move. Jixuan's gaze darkened. Then she's going to try and climb into his room. Jihao inhaled sharply. And make it look like something just happened, so she can force a marriage. A ripple of shock spread across those listening. Meanwhile, Han Merong continued smiling, completely unaware. Lianhua's thoughts didn't stop. But that's not even the worst part. The tension thickened. She's also planning to drug Liu Yanxi. Liu Yanxi stiffened and sent her to another man's room. Ziyun's expression darkened instantly. Gasps were barely contained across nearby tables. That way, she ruins Yanxi's reputation and clears her own path. The Empress's gaze turned cold. The Emperor's fingers tapped once light, deliberate. But Lianhua continued, unaware of the storm she was creating. In the story, it almost worked. Ziyun clenched his jaw. She actually managed to get into his room. Han Merong shifted slightly in her seat, still smiling sweetly, unaware of the daggers now being subtly directed her way. He was already affected, but still fought her off. Ziyun's ears turned red, but not from embarrassment. From anger. He pushed her away even while struggling to stay conscious. Jihao covered his mouth again. And then, Lianhua's grip tightened on her chopsticks. He went looking for Yanxi. Liu Yanxi's heart pounded. And found her in another room. The hall grew heavier. That disgusting man. Her thoughts turned sharp. Han Merong's cousin. Fen Ruqing. Ziyun's eyes flashed with fury. She continued. Ziyun kicked him across the room. Jihao nearly flinched just imagining it. Honestly deserved. Should have kicked harder. A few listeners almost choked. After that, everything exploded. Reputation, accusations, chaos. Lianhua sighed inwardly. Messy. Very messy. 0 stars. Do not recommend. Around her, the reaction was no longer subtle. People were staring. Whispers began. Soft at first, then spreading. Eyes slowly turned toward Han Merong. Not admiring. Judging. Cold. Sharp. But Han Merong misread everything. She lifted her chin slightly, smiling even sweeter. Thinking that she had captured everyone's attention. That they were impressed. That she was admired. Meanwhile, near the entrance, Liang Ziyun and Lu Yanxi stood frozen. Both had heard everything. Clearly. Completely. Ziyun's face darkened, jaw tight. Yanxia's face flushed, part shock, part anger, part disbelief. They slowly turned, their gazes landing on Han Merong. Very different from before. Not polite. Not neutral. Aware. At the head of the hall, the emperor took a slow sip of tea. Then, set it down. A subtle gesture. Silent orders moved once again. Guards shifted positions. Servants were quietly replaced. Watchful eyes locked onto specific targets. And Grandfather Xing, still smiling outwardly, felt a bead of cold sweat trail down his back. This girl. Delightful. Terrifying. Invaluable. All at once. Meanwhile, Yuan Lianhua took another bite of food. This is really good. Completely unaware that she had just exposed a scandal that could ruin lives. Saved 2 people from a devastating trap and turned admiration into suspicion, with nothing but her thoughts. Yuan Lianhua quietly chewed her food, her expression serene. Inside, still chaos. Why did I even read that kind of story? She sighed inwardly. Schemes, green tea villains, heartbreak, betrayals. Who writes this kind of emotional torture? She poked lightly at her food. At least I'm just a background character, right? Her chopsticks slowed. I am a background character, right? I should still be careful. Background characters die early too sometimes. Jihao nearly choked again. No reckless behavior. Stay alive. Stay safe. A softer thought followed. And maybe admire General Jean Rouet from a safe distance. Her face warmed. My general. Jihao turned away completely. Yes. Survival first. Admiration second. Always in that order. She nodded to herself slightly. Then, she looked up. Father, she said politely, I would like to take a walk. Jing Yuan glanced at her, then nodded. Do not go too far. Madame Yuan smiled gently. Jixuan, go with your sister. Jixuan nodded immediately. Of course. Jihao looked like he wanted to go too, but wisely stayed seated. As Lianhua and Jixuan left, the hall shifted. Not silent, but different. Quieter. Because they could no longer hear her thoughts. Several people subtly relaxed. Others almost missed it. The night air was cool and refreshing. Lanterns lined the pathways, casting a soft golden glow over the gardens. Flowers swayed gently under the breeze, and the distant sound of music from the hall became faint. Lianhua walked ahead lightly, hands behind her back. Then, as if remembering something, she turned. Brother, she said casually, what do you think of Lady Su? Jixuan blinked slightly. Lady Su. He thought for a moment. I've never met her personally, he admitted. But I've heard she is kind and well-mannered. Lianhua smiled. Inside, her thoughts sparkled. She has a crush on you, my dear brother. Jixuan froze mid-step. His ears turned red instantly. He stopped walking. Lianhua, completely unbothered, continued strolling ahead. Then, if you meet her properly, she continued aloud, and find that you like her. She turned back, tilting her head slightly. What would you do? Jixuan opened his mouth, then closed it. He hesitated. I don't know. Honest. Uncertain. Lianhua nodded thoughtfully. Inside, her brain went into full chaos again. You should propose immediately. Jixuan's eyes widened slightly. No hesitation. No delay. Lock it in. Secure the future happiness. He looked mildly panicked now. Because in the story, she marries someone else, and it doesn't end well. Jixuan's expression stiffened. A flicker of urgency appeared in his eyes. He stepped closer to her slightly. Then what would you advise me to do? He asked. Lianhua beamed. Bright. Certain. You should find an opportunity, she said aloud and proposed to Lady Su. Jixuan blinked. I think you would like her, she added with a soft smile. Jixuan stood there, processing, still blushing, still stunned. And then, as if fate itself had been listening, they saw her, Lady Su, standing not far away, face flushed, eyes slightly wide. Clearly, she had heard everything. Lianhua's eyes lit up. Perfect timing. Without hesitation, she walked straight toward her. Lady Su, Lianhua greeted warmly. Lady Su bowed slightly, still flustered. Miss Yuan. Lianhua turned slightly, gesturing to Jixuan. This is my elder brother, Yuan Jixuan. Jixuan stepped forward, bowing politely. Lady Su. Lady Su returned the greeting, her face still pink. Then, before either of them could recover, Lianhua smiled brightly. You two should talk, she said cheerfully. And then, she stepped back and walked away. Quickly. Very quickly. Almost skipping, leaving the two behind. Silence. Jixuan and Lady Su stood there. Awkward. Very awkward. Both red, neither knowing where to look. Jixuan cleared his throat. The weather is quite nice tonight. He mentally froze. What kind of opening is that? Lady Su nodded. Yes, it is. She looked at the lanterns, then at him, then away again. Jixuan clenched his sleeve slightly, then gathered courage. Would you like to walk a little further? He asked. Lady Su blinked, then nodded softly. I would. Not far away. Hidden behind a tree. Lianhua peeked. Yes. Success. She pumped her fist silently. Mission accomplished. She straightened proudly. I am a genius. And with that, Yuan Lianhua. Unofficial matchmaker. Unintentional prophet. And chaotic background character, Yuan Lianhua was still peeking from behind the tree, watching from afar as her brother and Lady Su slowly walked together beneath the lantern-lit path. Look at them. Walking side by side. Progress. Romance. Development. I deserve credit for this. She nodded to herself proudly. I should start charging for matchmaking services. Satisfied, she stepped back and immediately bumped into something. Solid. Warm. Unmoving. Oof. She stumbled slightly, then looked up and froze. General Xingjianrui stood before her. Her heart skipped, then raced. I'm sorry, she said quickly, lowering her head. Inside, absolute destruction. I just bumped into him. His chest is so hard. Jianrui stiffened. Is he made of stone? No, this is better than stone. His ears turned red. Why does he feel so solid? This is dangerous. Jianrui looked away briefly, trying to steady himself. I want to hug him. His fingers curled slightly. No, I want to cling to him. Forever. Like permanently. Attach myself and never leave. Jianrui inhaled slowly. I think I'm melting. I have melted. I am no longer functioning. He cleared his throat softly. Then, instead of retreating, he spoke. Calm. Low. Just a hint of something teasing. Miss Yuan. Lianhua's heart jumped again. Why do you look like a kitten hiding behind a tree? He tilted his head slightly. A small one at that. Watching quietly. Then bumping into people when she tries to escape. His voice softened just a fraction. Should I be concerned or amused? Lianhua's face turned bright red instantly. She lowered her head quickly. Inside. She was gone. Kitten? He called me a kitten. Jianrui braced himself. I can be a kitten if you want. He froze. I'll behave. I'll stay quiet. You can even keep me in your sleeve. No, better, your pocket. Jianrui's composure cracked slightly. So we never have to be apart. His ears burned. Lianhua, outwardly, completely composed. I was just checking on someone, she said softly. As if nothing had happened. Jianrui looked at her. Really looked this time. At her lowered gaze. Her flushed cheeks. Her steady voice. That did not match her thoughts at all. A faint smile tugged at his lips. I see. A brief pause. Then, would you like to walk? Lianhua blinked. Looked up. Met his eyes. Just for a second. And nodded. A little too quickly. Yes. Inside. Chaos erupted again. Why did I nod so fast? Jianrui turned slightly, gesturing beside him. She stepped forward to walk with him. Calm down. Calm down. Walk normally. You are a dignified young lady. Her steps became very careful. Don't trip. Do not trip in front of him. That would be the end of my existence. Jean-Rouet walked beside her, steady and composed, though his ears still held a faint trace of red. He's so tall. He glanced slightly downward. His side profile is lethal. He looked ahead again. If I look at him too long, I will combust. Jean-Rouet almost smiled. Lantern light flickered softly as they walked side by side, the night air cool and quiet. Between them, no spoken words lingered for a moment. But her thoughts filled the silence completely. And for once, Jean-Rouet did not mind it at all. The lantern-lit path grew quieter as they walked side by side. The distant sounds of the banquet softened into a gentle hum, replaced by the whisper of wind through trees and the faint ripple of water nearby. Jean-Rouet slowed his steps. There, he said softly. A small pond came into view, its surface reflecting the moon like a silver mirror. Lotus leaves floated gently, and the light of nearby lanterns shimmered across the water. He sat down on a smooth stone near the edge. Lianhua followed. Graceful. Composed. Inside. Complete disaster. We're sitting by the pond, under lantern light. Her thoughts spiraled instantly. This is a date. Jean-Rouet's fingers paused briefly on his knee. This is definitely a date. There's no way this is not a date. He cleared his throat lightly. Miss Yuan, he began, his voice calm. May I ask you something? Lianhua straightened slightly. Yes. He looked at the pond for a moment before speaking. Do you admire someone? Or perhaps, like someone? Lianhua froze. Her eyes instinctively flicked toward him. Then away. Her heart slammed. Inside. No restraint. Yes. You. It's you. I like you. I will like you forever. Jean-Rouet's breath caught faintly. Loyalty. Devotion. Lifelong admiration package. He looked away quickly, hiding the faint heat on his ears. It's all right, he said gently. You don't have to answer. Lianhua shook her head quickly. It's not that. She took a breath. I'm just shy. Inside. Understatement of the century. She steadied herself. There is someone I like, she admitted softly. Jean-Rouet turned to look at her fully now. But I'm not sure if that person likes me back. A quiet honesty lingered in her voice. Jean-Rouet's gaze softened. Perhaps. That person does, he said. Lianhua blinked. You are kind, he continued, voice low and steady. Well-mannered. Thoughtful. Her breath caught. And sincere. Her fingers tightened slightly in her lap. The person you like, he added with a faint smile, must be very fortunate. Lianhua's face turned red instantly. Inside. She combusted. Oh my, he said that. I'm so happy I could die. No wait, not yet. Jean-Rouet nearly lost his composure. I still want to live. I still want to see him. Stay near him. Admire him. He pressed his lips together. Should I confess? No, too bold, too bold. I want to dig a hole. I want to bury myself. Jean-Rouet almost laughed. What do I do? What do I say? Before she could spiral further, Jean-Rouet spoke again. Do you remember, he said quietly, what I mentioned earlier? She looked at him. That I've begun to take interest in someone. Lianhua froze. Her heart tightened. She nodded slowly. Inside, a storm brewed. Right, that. A sharp, unfamiliar ache crept in. He likes someone else. Her chest felt heavy. Of course he does. Why wouldn't he? Jean-Rouet watched her carefully. Then, he smiled. That person, he leaned slightly closer. Made me feel something I've never quite understood before. Lianhua's breath hitched. She appreciates me, he continued softly, more than I could have imagined. Her fingers curled slightly. She screamed in her mind. I could appreciate you more. I would continue to appreciate you. For the rest of my life. Jean-Rouet stilled. The pond rippled gently. Jean-Rouet's gaze softened. Slowly, he lifted his hand. And gently, touched her cheek. Lianhua stiffened. Her breath stopped. Inside, complete collapse. What is happening? His fingers brushed lightly against her hair, tucking a loose strand behind her ear. Oh no. Her face burned. I'm so happy. His touch lingered just enough to send her thoughts spiraling. Don't stop. I'm going insane. Calm down. Calm down. Heart, please calm down. It's beating too fast. It's going to jump out. Jean-Rouet's lips curved slightly. Then, he leaned just a little closer. I was talking about you. Lianhua froze completely. Her mind. Blink. Then then exploded. You, he repeated softly. I find you very interesting. Her face turned completely red. Her eyes widened slightly, then softened. And slowly, a smile spread across her lips. Bright, uncontrolled. She tried to hold it in. Failed completely. Inside, fireworks. He likes me. John Rue chuckled quietly under his breath. And, under the soft glow of lantern light, by the quiet pond, Yuan Lianhua smiled. Heart racing. Thoughts in chaos. And for once, everything she felt was finally heard. After that conversation by the pond, Yuan Lianhua genuinely did not know how she returned to the banquet hall, or how she got into the carriage, or how she even made it back to the Yuan estate alive. Her soul had practically floated away. She sat inside the carriage with perfect posture. Quiet. Still. Her face, however, was glowing. Her eyes looked suspiciously close to turning into little hearts. Jihao stared at her for a long moment. I think she's no longer with us, he whispered. Madame Yuan covered her lips lightly, hiding a smile. Across from them, Lianhua continued staring blankly into the air. Inside her head, nothing but John Rue. He touched my face. Jihao immediately looked away. His hand was warm. Jixuan coughed into his sleeve. And he said he likes me. Jihao's shoulders began shaking violently again. General Xing likes me. Meanwhile, Lianhua remained perfectly motionless outside, like a very elegant statue. A love-struck statue. She didn't even notice that her father had not returned with them yet, having remained behind at the banquet for discussions with the emperor and grandfather Xing. Madame Yuan observed her daughter quietly, then glanced toward her sons. What happened? She asked softly. Jihao nearly burst. Before he could speak, Jixuan cleared his throat. General Xing escorted her back. Madame Yuan's brows lifted slightly. Jihao added helpfully. She stared at him the entire way. Madame Yuan blinked. She didn't even blink, Jihao continued seriously. Jixuan looked away, ears faintly red himself. Because he, unfortunately, was not in much better condition. After Lianhua had abandoned him with Lady Su earlier, they were able to talk about many things in common and had somehow managed to escort her back to their table. Somehow. He still wasn't entirely sure how. He only remembered Lady Su smiling softly beneath the lantern light, and his own heartbeat becoming increasingly unreasonable. Jihao glanced at his elder brother, then smirked. You're blushing too. Jixuan instantly stiffened. I am not. You absolutely are. Madame Yuan sighed softly, though amusement lingered in her eyes. Meanwhile, Lianhua was still gone mentally. He likes me. Jihao buried his face in his sleeve. He really likes me. She slowly touched her own cheek. He touched this side first. Jihao nearly fell sideways. No wait, was it this side? At that point, Jixuan genuinely could not look at his sister anymore. Even after returning home, Lianhua still could not calm down. She sat before her mirror in a daze while servants helped remove her hair ornaments. The jade pin was placed carefully aside. But her mind remained at the pond. He smiled at me. She covered her face with both hands. Why did he have to smile like that? The maid behind her bit her lip hard. Because unfortunately, she could hear everything too. After changing into lighter robes, Lianhua climbed onto her bed, then rolled once into her blanket. Immediately, she froze and buried her face into the pillow. Wait. A horrifying realization struck her. I never told him I like him too. She sat up abruptly. Oh no. Then froze again. Lianhua collapsed back into bed dramatically. What was I doing? She kicked lightly under the blanket. He confessed, and I just stared at him like an idiot. Her face turned red again. No, worse. I stared at him like a love-struck fool. She rolled again. What if he thinks I'm strange? Another roll. What if he thinks I have no thoughts in my head except admiring his face? Which is currently true, unfortunately. She groaned into her pillow. Why didn't I say it back? Another dramatic flop onto the bed. I should have said, I like you too. Simple. Elegant. Romantic. She buried herself deeper into the blanket. Instead, I malfunctioned completely. Outside her room. 2 weeks passed. And Yuan Lianhua was suffering. Not physically. Emotionally. Mentally. Romantically. She sat in the pavilion at the Yuan estate, staring blankly at the pond while holding a pastry she had forgotten to eat half an hour ago. It's already been 2 weeks. She sighed deeply. She hasn't seen General Jean Rouet. A stronger sigh followed. Did something happen? Is he eating properly? Sleeping properly? Did he get injured already? Nearby servants quietly lowered their heads. Because unfortunately, they could hear her too. Lian Hua rested her chin on her hand dramatically. I miss his face. No, his entire existence. Another sigh. His eyes. She clutched her chest lightly. Those star-like eyes. The maid nearby almost smiled. Meanwhile, 3 days earlier, her father had finally returned home after the birthday banquet. Only then, after seeing him casually drinking tea in the courtyard, did Lian Hua blink and think, wait, father wasn't with us that night? Jing Yuan nearly laughed into his cup. Today, Lian Hua was out in the city with Jihao. The streets were lively. Vendors shouted enthusiastically while people crowded around stalls selling pastries, silks, ornaments, and hot skewers. Jihao lazily fanned himself while following beside his sister. Lian Hua, meanwhile, looked entirely distracted. What if Jean Rouet lost weight? Jihao coughed. Battlefields are hard. He probably looks even more handsome covered in dust and blood though. Jihao immediately turned away. No. Why am I imagining this? As they passed by a tea stall, voices nearby suddenly rose. Have you heard? The western borders are under attack again. The General Xing army has been fighting non-stop. Fortunately, the young general is holding the line. Lian Hua froze instantly. Her face paled. Inside, panic exploded. What? Already? Her thoughts spiraled rapidly. Did the ambush happen already? Did someone betray him? Was he wounded? Is he bleeding somewhere right now? Did he sleep at all? Jihao quickly patted her head. Relax, he said gently. Lian Hua looked at him. General Xing is strong, Jihao continued reassuringly. And the emperor fully supports him. Nothing will happen so easily. Lian Hua listened carefully, then slowly calmed down. Right, he's Jean Rouet. Her breathing eased. My general is very capable. Jihao chuckled silently. Then, Lian Hua narrowed her eyes at him. Second brother. Jihao stiffened. How did you know I was worried about him? Danger. Immediate danger. Jihao laughed awkwardly. It's written all over your face, he said quickly. Besides, everyone knows you like General Xing. Lian Hua instantly blushed. I do not make it that obvious. Jihao silently looked away. You absolutely do. Not long after, they passed by a famous tea house. And there, by the window, sat Jixuan. With Lady Su Yanqing. Lian Hua's eyes widened. Then immediately, she grabbed Jihao's sleeve dramatically. Quick. Other table. Before Jihao could react, she dragged him away. The two siblings hid themselves behind a nearby screen. Lian Hua carefully peeked toward the couple. Inside, celebration erupted. It's a date. Jixuan nearly dropped his teacup. Yanqing's face turned bright red instantly. My brother actually invited her out. Jihao bit his lip hard. Look at them sitting together. They match so well. Jixuan's ears burned. This is wonderful. Beautiful. Romantic. Yanqing lowered her head shyly. Jihao finally started chuckling openly. Should we go greet them? He whispered teasingly. Lian Hua immediately shook her head violently. No, don't bother them. Inside, leave them alone. Let romance bloom naturally. Jihao laughed harder. Then, Lian Hua suddenly turned toward him. What about you? Jihao blinked. What about me? Do you like someone? Jihao looked at her. Lian Hua, meanwhile, was already thinking deeply. In the original story, second brother became a merchant. But things went badly because of stepmother's relatives. His smile faded slightly. Those greedy people wanted our family's assets. Lian Hua's expression softened. They even harmed mother. Jihao's hand tightened slightly. She miscarried. The atmosphere around him changed instantly. And after that, our family slowly fell apart. Lian Hua looked down briefly. I got sick too, and died early. Jihao quietly looked away toward the street. But then, Lian Hua smiled softly. Luckily none of that happened now. Her thoughts brightened again. Mother already cut ties with those relatives. Jihao relaxed slightly. And our family is doing well. Then, her eyes suddenly sparkled. Wait. Jihao immediately sensed danger. Second brother also needs a wife. Jihao almost inhaled tea powder. Someone pretty. Smart. Reliable. Lian Hua thought deeply. Then, a face appeared in her mind. Lady Lin Xia. Jihao froze. She's beautiful. Talented. Decent. Her family is rich too. He slowly opened his fan wider. Maybe she and second brother would suit each other. Jihao's ears turned red. But I don't know their preferences. Lianhua slowly turned to look at him thoughtfully. Jihao immediately looked out the window, fanning himself rapidly. Meanwhile, at the other table, Jixuan and Yanqing had heard everything. Jixuan nearly smiled into his tea. Yanqing blinked, then softly said, "I'm friends with Lady Lin." Jixuan looked at her. "I could invite her next time." Jixuan chuckled quietly. "That sounds like a good idea." The two exchanged a glance, comfortable now in a way they had not been before. At first, Yanqing had panicked after realizing she could hear Lianhua's thoughts. But later, when she carefully asked Jixuan about it, everything had been confirmed. And somehow, instead of fear, it brought them closer. Jixuan had even gone personally to the Su residence days earlier, formally, respectfully, to introduce himself properly, and quietly express his wish to seek permission to marry Lady Su in the future. Bold, direct, exactly as Lianhua had advised. Meanwhile, the great mastermind herself remained entirely unaware. Another month passed, and Yuan Lianhua was slowly withering away. Not physically, but emotionally, dramatically, and romantically. She sat in the pavilion with a lifeless expression, staring blankly at the fish pond while lotus leaves drifted peacefully across the water. Meanwhile, inside her mind, absolute catastrophe. It's already been a month. She sighed heavily. The Western border war should already be intense by now. Madame Yuan quietly drank tea. Jihao leaned against a pillar, silently listening. Jixuan looked calm on the surface. Only Jing Yuan remained perfectly composed. Lianhua clutched her sleeve dramatically. What if Zhang Rui already got stabbed by that traitor? Jihao closed his eyes briefly. What if he's injured somewhere right now? Lianhua's expression became increasingly tragic. What if he lost weight? Jihao almost laughed. What if nobody reminds him to eat? Madame Yuan pressed her lips together. What if he's standing dramatically under the rain while bleeding? Jixuan looked away immediately. No. Stop. Why is my imagination like this? Lianhua covered her face. I miss him so much. At that exact moment, a servant hurried into the courtyard. Master, an imperial messenger has arrived. Everyone straightened slightly. Moments later, a palace eunuch entered respectfully. The emperor summons Miss Yuan to the palace. Lianhua froze. Completely froze. Me? Panic exploded instantly. Why me? Jihao quietly looked down. Did I accidentally commit treason? The eunuch blinked faintly. Did I gossip too hard? Jixuan coughed into his sleeve. Am I getting executed? Madame Yuan nearly smiled. Wait, what are palace prison cells like? Jihao's shoulders began trembling violently again. No, calm down. Maybe they just want to question me. Lianhua slowly turned pale. Questioning leads to execution sometimes. Lianhua. Jing Yuan's calm voice interrupted her spiral. She looked at him pitifully. Her father smiled faintly. It's all right, he assured gently. I will accompany you. Lianhua blinked. And nothing will happen to you. Her panic eased slightly. Really? Jing Yuan nodded. Though inwardly, he already had several guesses why the emperor wanted to see his daughter. And none of them were ordinary. The moment Lianhua stepped inside the palace grounds, her eyes widened. Golden roofs shimmered beneath the afternoon sun. Massive red pillars towered above marble floors polished smooth from generations of footsteps. Servants and guards moved with careful precision while palace eunuchs quietly carried trays through long corridors. Lianhua stared everywhere. This place is huge. Jihao, who had secretly followed behind with Jixuan through another route after hearing about the summons, silently agreed. One wrong turn and I'd probably disappear forever. Jing Yuan hit a cough. As they entered the audience hall, many familiar faces were already present. Officials, nobles, court ministers, even several palace attendants. And the moment Lianhua saw them, her thoughts resumed immediately. Oh no, why are there so many people here? Several officials quietly lowered their heads. This feels suspicious. The emperor calmly sipped tea from above. Very suspicious. Then, Lianhua's gaze landed on a round, chubby official standing proudly near the front. Her eyes narrowed slightly. The hall subtly stiffened. Official Peng Weijin. The mentioned official blinked proudly, unaware. This fatty really has energy. Several ministers immediately looked away. 3 secret lovers outside the capital. Silence. Peng Weijin continued standing proudly. 3 different houses too. Impressive scheduling, honestly. The emperor's fingers tapped lightly against his cup. And he's stealing treasury funds to support all of them. Several officials inhaled sharply. Corruption and romance. Multi-talented. Jihao lowered his head instantly. Peng Weijin smiled politely. Still clueless. Meanwhile, cold glances had already landed on him from multiple directions. Then, Lianhua's gaze drifted towards several palace eunuchs standing quietly near the pillars. Her expression softened slightly. Being a eunuch must have been painful. The hall unexpectedly quieted further. Lianhua looked at them with genuine pity. Why did the previous emperor and empress dowager force so many people into this life? A few older eunuchs lowered their heads silently. They're still people. One elderly eunuch's eyes trembled slightly. They still have feelings too. The emperor's expression subtly changed. Lianhua sighed inwardly. And the castration process sounds horrifying. Several officials nearly coughed themselves to death. Absolutely terrifying. I'd rather die immediately. Jing Yuan rubbed his forehead faintly. And some of them were forced into it against their will. A strange heaviness settled briefly through the hall. Some eunuchs looked down quietly. Others looked toward Lianhua in stunned silence. Then, her eyes landed on another official. Tall, thin, sharp-faced. Instant disgust filled her mind. Ugh. Feng Kaiyuan. The official straightened proudly. This bastard again. Several ministers immediately tensed. Always beating eunuchs like they're animals. One eunuch quietly clenched his sleeve. Trash-talking them every day. Feng Kaiyuan still stood proudly, unaware his life was collapsing. Then, Lianhua's expression darkened further. But secretly he enjoys touching them. The hall froze. Complete stillness. Even the emperor paused mid-sip. Disgusting demon. Several officials looked horrified. Sexually harassing powerless people and pretending it's punishment. One younger eunuch's face turned pale instantly. Honestly, he deserves to get beaten to death. The emperor slowly lowered his teacup. Very slowly. Meanwhile, Feng Kaiyuan remained completely oblivious. Still standing there like a proud crane. Completely unaware that his entire reputation had just been buried alive by one beautiful young lady who wasn't even opening her mouth. After hearing Yuan Lianhua's chaotic thoughts, the atmosphere inside the imperial hall subtly changed once again. The emperor remained seated calmly upon the dragon throne. But beneath that calmness, orders had already been silently delivered. Several hidden guards disappeared quietly from the hall. Investigations would begin immediately. Evidence would be gathered. And those corrupt officials, along with the disgusting men Lianhua had unknowingly exposed, would soon discover that their peaceful days were over. Meanwhile, Yuan Lianhua still stood below the throne, completely unaware she had once again overturned half the court. The emperor cleared his throat lightly. The hall quieted. Then, his gaze landed on her. Miss Yuan, he said slowly. Lianhua stiffened. I called you here today. The emperor's lips curved faintly. To ask your thoughts about marriage. Lianhua's eyes widened instantly. Marriage. The ministers secretly perked up. Oh no. Jihao looked down immediately. Wait. Marriage? Now? Suddenly? Lianhua's mind spiraled. I'm only willing to marry my general. The emperor nearly smiled. Several officials instantly understood. The emperor calmly continued. There is a young man, he said deliberately, who wishes to ask for your hand in marriage once he returns. He intentionally did not mention the name. Lianhua's thoughts exploded instantly. What do I do? Her face slowly turned red. Who is this young man? She panicked internally. Why would he even tell the emperor personally? The emperor watched her with growing amusement. Wait, was there something like this in the original story? Lianhua racked her brain desperately. No. Her expression slowly changed. By this point in the story, the original owner of this body was already dead. Several listeners quietly inhaled. Jing Yuan's eyes softened slightly. Ji Xuan looked down silently. Jihao clenched his fan lightly. Because they all knew. The terrible future she once unknowingly spoke of had already begun changing. Their family had survived. Madame Yuan remained healthy. The household was stable. The hidden dangers had been uprooted early. And Yuan Lianhua was still alive. Very alive. Currently panicking before the emperor. She was just about to answer, when suddenly, the grand doors of the hall opened. The sound echoed sharply. Everyone turned. Footsteps entered the hall. Heavy, disciplined, powerful. And there, in black armor dusted with traces of battle, stood General Xing Jianrui. Behind him, his soldiers followed proudly. Lianhua froze completely. Then, her eyes widened. Jianrui. Instantly, joy burst inside her chest so violently she almost cried. He's alive. Tears welled in her eyes immediately. He really came back. Jianrui's gaze found her at once, and softened instantly. Then, he and the soldiers knelt before the emperor. We greet your majesty, Jianrui said firmly. The western border has been secured. We return victorious. The hall erupted. Excited murmurs spread everywhere. Several officials sighed in relief. Others praised loudly. The emperor laughed heartily. Excellent. His voice echoed proudly across the hall. You have defended the empire well. He looked toward the soldiers. You have protected both crown and people with loyalty and courage. The soldiers straightened proudly. Rise, the emperor ordered warmly. You shall all be rewarded generously for your service. The soldiers thanked him immediately. Then, Jianrui stepped forward once more. His expression remained composed, but his eyes briefly flickered toward Lianhua. Your Majesty, he said respectfully. This minister wishes to ask regarding the personal request mentioned in my letter. The emperor smiled instantly. Then, very deliberately, looked toward Lianhua, who was still standing there with watery eyes while staring at Jianrui, like he had personally descended from heaven. The emperor almost laughed. The young lady you wish to marry. He paused dramatically. Has not answered my question yet. Silence. Jianrui froze slightly. Then slowly, his expression shifted. Not fully devastated, but dangerously close. Lianhua looked between them in shock. Wait. Her brain stopped functioning. The young man. She slowly looked toward Jianrui. Jianrui looked back at her quietly. And for the first time since entering the hall, he genuinely looked nervous. The emperor finally burst into laughter. Very well, he said amusedly. I should clarify before the general loses color in front of the court. Several ministers immediately lowered their heads to hide smiles. The emperor looked at Lianhua again. Miss Yuan. His voice gentled slightly. Are you willing to marry General Xing Jianrui? Lianhua's mind went blank. Completely blank. Then, exploded. She nodded instantly. Quickly. Repeatedly. Yes. The entire hall looked toward her. Lianhua froze slightly, then lowered her head in embarrassment. Inside, absolute chaos. 1,000,000% yes. Jihao covered his face instantly. I agree. I consent. I volunteer. Please marry me immediately. Several ministers nearly coughed blood. I would marry him right now. Jianrui's ears turned completely red. No need to ask twice. The emperor laughed so hard this time even her father smiled knowingly. Meanwhile, Jianrui looked at Lianhua quietly. And despite the countless victories he had achieved on the battlefield, nothing had ever made his heart race quite like this. Yuan Lianhua genuinely did not expect this kind of development. Not at all. Even after nodding furiously before the emperor, she stood frozen in the middle of the imperial hall. Then slowly, very slowly, understanding dawned on her. Wait. Her eyes widened. The young man the emperor mentioned. She turned stiffly toward Jianrui. Jianrui looked back at her quietly. Lianhua's face exploded red instantly. It was him. Several ministers immediately looked away. General Jianrui himself wants to marry me. She covered her face with both hands immediately. I thought it was some random noble young master. Jihao silently held onto a pillar for support. Oh no. I agreed too fast. Jianrui's ears burned again. Was I too obvious? The emperor laughed openly this time. Then, the emperor turned toward Jing Yuan. Minister Yuan, he said warmly, what are your thoughts? The hall quieted again. Lianhua peeked through her fingers toward her father. Her eyes completely pleading. Jing Yuan looked at his daughter, then toward Jianrui. The young general stood straight and steady despite the countless eyes upon him. Reliable, disciplined, loyal, and most importantly, when he looked at Lianhua, there was unmistakable gentleness there. Jing Yuan slowly smiled. This official believes, he said calmly, that my daughter will be in good hands. Lianhua's eyes widened. And this official approves of General Xing as his future son-in-law. The moment those words fell, Lianhua nearly burst into tears. Father! Before Jing Yuan could react, Lianhua rushed forward and hugged him tightly. The entire hall blinked. Jing Yuan himself looked genuinely startled, because his daughter usually behaved elegantly in public. Not like an overjoyed child clinging to him emotionally in front of the entire imperial court. But after a moment, his expression softened, and he patted her back gently. It's all right, he said quietly. Lianhua nodded rapidly while sniffling. Inside, absolute emotional collapse. Father approved. Jihao finally gave up hiding in the crowd. He stepped forward grinning openly. Jixuan followed beside him, smiling softly as well. Both brothers looked genuinely happy for their sister, especially after spending months listening to her endless thoughts about Zhangrui. At this point, if she married anyone else, they probably would have felt strange. Meanwhile, Zhangrui quietly released a breath. Relief. True relief. Because truthfully, this outcome had not been part of his original plans. At first, he merely found Yuan Lianhua interesting, then unforgettable. He remembered clearly the flower viewing banquet. The young lady standing beneath the blossoms while internally praising him so passionately that his ears burned for half the night. Her bright gaze, her obvious fondness, her constant chaotic thoughts. And then, her warning. Be careful of the betrayal behind you. That single thought had stayed with him throughout the Western campaign. Even during battle, he remembered it. At night, during the rare moments he managed to sleep, he often dreamed of her. Sometimes smiling at him, sometimes worrying over him dramatically, sometimes internally screaming because he looked handsome. His soldiers had even noticed he occasionally woke up strangely silent while staring into the distance afterward. And, because of her warning, Zhangrui secretly investigated the officers closest to him. Carefully, quietly. And he found it. The betrayal. One trusted subordinate had indeed been secretly colluding with enemy forces. The very ambush that should have severely wounded Zhangrui never succeeded. Because he was prepared. The traitor was captured before the plan could fully unfold. The Western campaign became far smoother afterward. And somewhere amidst the battlefield, between strategy meetings, bloodshed, sleepless nights, and victory, Zhangrui realized something clearly. He wanted to return alive. For her. So, before the final battle, he wrote a letter directly to the emperor, requesting permission to seek Yuan Lianhua's hand in marriage. And alongside it, he promised victory. Back in the imperial hall, Grandfather Xing stroked his beard while smiling deeply. Because he remembered that night very clearly too. The night of his 60th birthday banquet. After the banquet ended, the emperor, Zhangrui, Grandfather Xing, and Zheng Yuan remained behind discussing matters privately. At first, Grandfather Xing himself had trouble believing such a bizarre thing. Hearing someone's thoughts? Impossible. Ridiculous. Absurd. Until Zheng Yuan calmly explained everything. From the moment Lianhua awakened after being unconscious, to how the family first heard her thoughts during dinner, to the missing silver in the Yuan clan accounts, to Madame Yuan's pregnancy, to the corrupt officials exposed during the Prime Minister's banquet. Every matter investigated had proven true. Even the emperor confirmed it personally, because many nobles at the banquet had heard the exact same thoughts. And after secretly investigating those exposed, the evidence had all surfaced. Corruption, schemes, poisoning, hidden affairs, attempted murder. All true. Grandfather Xing had been stunned speechless for an entire incense stick. Meanwhile, Zhangrui quietly recounted Lianhua's warning regarding the western border betrayal. That was when the emperor finally realized Yuan Lianhua's strange ability was not merely amusing gossip. It could change fate itself. And now, looking at the young lady happily standing before the court while internally screaming from joy, the emperor laughed again. Perhaps, out of all the changes brought by her chaotic thoughts, this one was his favorite. The imperial palace was lively once again the very next day. Lanterns glowed beneath carved golden beams while music drifted gently through the grand hall. Rows of officials, nobles, generals, and honored soldiers filled the banquet seats prepared by the emperor himself. It was a celebration banquet. A victory banquet. For the Western Border Campaign, the soldiers who survived the war were rewarded generously. Gold, land, titles, promotions, silks and estates. The emperor spared no expense. Even the atmosphere felt lighter than usual. The empire had won, and their people could finally breathe peacefully again. At the front, General Xing Zhanrui stood before the throne in dark formal robes embroidered with silver thread. Tall, broad-shouldered, handsome enough to make hearts collapse. Yuan Lianhua nearly stopped breathing again. He looks even more handsome today. Jihao quietly lowered his wine cup. This should be illegal. Lady Su Yanqing nearly choked on tea. How can someone exist looking like this? Zhanrui's ears slowly turned red again. The emperor pretended not to notice. After praising the generals and soldiers for their loyalty and bravery, the emperor officially promoted Zhanrui once more. From today onward, the emperor announced proudly, General Xing Zhanrui shall oversee the Northern Military Command. The hall erupted into praise. Lianhua stared at Zhanrui with sparkling eyes. Amazing. My general got promoted again. Her heart swelled dramatically. He's so capable, so handsome, so reliable. Zhanrui tried very hard not to smile too obviously. Then, the banquet officially began. Lianhua was seated beside Zhanrui, and unfortunately for her, she still had not adapted to this reality at all. Even now, she occasionally glanced sideways at him like she couldn't believe he was real. He's really sitting beside me. Zhanrui calmly poured tea for her. Lianhua immediately malfunctioned internally. He poured tea for me. Jihao's shoulders shook violently again. Across from them, Jixuan silently rubbed his forehead, because his sister's thoughts had become even more chaotic after getting engaged. Meanwhile, Lianhua finally looked around the banquet table properly, then froze. Wait. Her eyes widened. She looked at Lady Su Yanqing sitting beside Jixuan, then at her eldest brother, then back again. The two of them looked very comfortable together. Very. Too comfortable. Lianhua slowly blinked. What happened? Jihao immediately looked away. Then, her gaze shifted further, and nearly stopped breathing again. Lady Lin Shuya sat beside Jihao, and her second brother, who normally joked endlessly, was currently sitting upright while awkwardly speaking to her quietly. Lianhua stared, completely stunned. Wait. She slowly turned toward Jihao, then toward Jixuan. What did I miss? Jihao finally burst into laughter. Little sister, he said teasingly, you finally noticed? Lianhua pointed shakily. You. Then toward Jixuan. You. Then toward the ladies. You both. Inside her mind, absolute chaos. When did this happen? Lady Su Yanqing blushed immediately. Jixuan coughed lightly into his sleeve. Jihao grinned proudly. Elder brother and Lady Su are already officially betrothed. Lianhua gasped. And they'll marry in late autumn, Jihao continued happily. Lianhua's eyes widened even more. So fast? Jihao looked very pleased with himself. And as for me? He glanced sideways at Lady Lin Shuya, who lowered her head shyly. I also plan to formally ask for Lady Lin's hand soon. Lianhua stared blankly. Then, slowly, she turned toward Zhanrui beside her. Did I disappear for several months or something? Zhanrui finally laughed softly. A low quiet laugh. Warm. Gentle. Lianhua instantly short-circuited again. His laugh sounds so nice. Zhanrui looked away briefly to hide his smile. Meanwhile, Lianhua remained utterly shocked. How did they progress faster than me? Jihao almost spit out his drink. I was too busy thinking about Zhanrui. Lady Lin smiled helplessly. Wait, was I really this distracted? Yes, she was. Very distracted. Especially because for the past month, her thoughts contained approximately 70% Zhanrui, 20% worrying about Zhanrui, 10% imagining Zhanrui. Still, as Lianhua looked around the table, her heart slowly warmed. Jixuan looked genuinely happy beside Lady Su. Jihao seemed far calmer and more mature now compared to before. Lady Lin appeared gentle and intelligent. And beside her father, Madame Yuan sat carefully with a noticeably larger belly now. Jing Yuan stayed attentive the entire banquet. Whenever Madame Yuan reached for something, he helped immediately. Whenever she looked tired, he quietly asked servants to prepare cushions or warm soup. Lianhua watched them softly. Father really treasures mother now. Madame Yuan smiled gently upon hearing that. And mother looks healthier too. Jixuan nodded faintly. The terrible future that once loomed over their household had completely changed. No miscarriage. No ruined business. No collapsing family. No lonely deaths. Instead, the Yuan family was thriving. And sitting beside her, Jianrui quietly reached beneath the table, then gently held her hand. Lianhua froze instantly. Her entire body stiffened. Then, her thoughts exploded so loudly. Half the nearby nobles nearly choked again. He's holding my hand. Yuan Lianhua was still internally collapsing over the fact that Xing Jianrui was secretly holding her hand beneath the banquet table. When suddenly, the emperor stood once more. The lively hall quieted immediately. Music softened. Conversation ceased. Even the dancers paused respectfully. The emperor swept his gaze across the hall before smiling faintly. "There is one more matter," he announced. The officials straightened. The emperor's eyes landed directly on Yuan Lianhua. "This concerns Miss Yuan." Lianhua instantly stiffened. "Me again?" Jihao immediately lowered his head because he already knew trouble, or chaos, was coming. The emperor continued calmly. "Miss Yuan has contributed greatly to the stability of the empire." The hall stirred in surprise. Lianhua blinked rapidly. "What contribution?" The emperor smiled. "Therefore, we have decided to bestow rewards upon her." Lianhua nearly dropped her chopsticks. "Rewards?" Several nobles looked shocked. Even Lady Lin widened her eyes. Meanwhile, those who had attended previous banquets and already knew the truth simply looked quietly amused. Because honestly, the empire probably owed this young lady more than rewards. Without her chaotic thoughts, multiple disasters would have happened already. The emperor slowly announced. "From this day onward, Yuan Lianhua shall receive the title Anil-Junju." Gasps spread across the hall. A noble title. And not a small one either. Lianhua stared blankly. Jujuanju. Her mind immediately spiraled again. Wait, why am I getting a title? Jianrui quietly squeezed her hand beneath the table reassuringly, which only made her thoughts even more chaotic. Jihao covered his face immediately. The emperor almost laughed before continuing. "In addition, she shall receive gold, silk, a private estate near the eastern district, and a 100-year jade ornament from the royal treasury." The hall became even louder. Lianhua looked genuinely horrified now. Every step felt unreal. When she finally stopped before the emperor, she bowed respectfully. "This subject thanks your majesty." Then she hesitated slightly. "But I truly do not understand why I am receiving all this." The hall quieted again. Lianhua looked genuinely confused. "I did not do anything remarkable." Several officials silently looked away. The emperor nearly coughed. "Did not do anything remarkable?" This young lady unknowingly overturned corruption cases, assassination plots, military betrayals, hidden crimes, ruined schemes, and even saved the imperial family. But of course, he could not exactly announce before the entire empire. Yes, because everyone close to you can hear your non-stop chaotic thoughts. Absolutely not. So instead, the emperor smiled mysteriously. "Miss Yuan is too modest." Lianhua blinked. The emperor continued meaningfully. "You may think your actions are ordinary." Several ministers silently agreed that nothing about this young lady was ordinary. "But because of you," the emperor said calmly, "many dangers were avoided." Lianhua stared blankly. "Avoided?" The emperor merely smiled. "The empire values those who contribute sincerely." He paused slightly. "And we especially value those with good hearts." Lianhua's eyes widened faintly. Because somehow, despite not understanding everything, she felt the emperor's words carried deeper meaning. Meanwhile, the people who knew the truth remained completely silent, especially Jianrui, because among everyone there, perhaps he understood best just how much she had changed things. Without her, he may not have survived the Western campaign unscathed. Without her, many innocent people would have suffered. And without her, his life would have remained cold and empty. The emperor then waved his hand lightly. A servant immediately stepped forward carrying a delicate golden tray. On it rested an exquisite jade token engraved with her newly bestowed title. Lianhua accepted it carefully with trembling hands. Still overwhelmed. "I suddenly became a Junju." Jihao nearly laughed again. "Mother would probably cry later." Madame Yuan already looked emotional. Then, the emperor smiled mischievously once more. "And since rewards should come in pairs." Lianhua blinked nervously. The emperor looked toward Jianrui. "We shall personally oversee the wedding between General Xing and Anil Junju." The hall erupted into cheers instantly. Lianhua's face turned completely red, while inside her mind, everything exploded again. The Emperor is personally handling my wedding after the endless congratulations, rewards, teasing, and overwhelming joy. Yuan Lianhua quietly slipped away from the grand hall with Xing Zhanrui beside her. The palace gardens were peaceful at night. Lanterns glowed softly along stone pathways, while moonlight shimmered over quiet ponds filled with blooming lotuses. The cool evening breeze carried the scent of flowers through the air. For the first time that day, everything felt calm. The two of them walked side by side slowly, neither speaking immediately. But inside Lianhua's mind, absolute chaos still continued. I still can't believe all this happened. Zhanrui silently listened beside her. Everything happened too fast. Lianhua looked up at the moon. When I first woke up in this world, I thought I was doomed. Her lips curved slightly. I thought I was just some background character destined to disappear early. Zhanrui's gaze softened faintly. But now, Lianhua looked ahead quietly. The original story doesn't even seem to exist anymore. The breeze gently moved her mint green sleeves. Everything changed. She smiled softly to herself. Father is happy. Mother is healthy. Elder brother found love. Second brother found someone too. Then her thoughts softened further. And I. Her heart thumped loudly. I'm going to marry the young general I admired even in my previous life. Zhanrui's ears slowly turned red again. Lianhua glanced toward him secretly. He was looking away slightly, appearing calm as always. But his ears betrayed him completely. Lianhua nearly melted again. He's so handsome even under moonlight. Zhanrui cleared his throat lightly, which only made her thoughts worse. His voice sounds nice too. Eventually, they stopped near a quiet pond. The moon reflected beautifully across the water. Lotus flowers drifted slowly under the night sky. For a moment, neither moved. Then, Zhanrui turned toward her fully, and slowly, carefully, held her hands. Lianhua instantly panicked internally. Her entire body stiffened. He's holding both my hands. Zhanrui almost smiled hearing the chaos inside her head. Then his expression gentled. Truly gentled. I'm very thankful, he said quietly, that I met you. Lianhua froze. The moonlight reflected in his eyes beautifully. There is no gift more precious to me than you. The moment those words reached her, Lianhua's eyes immediately turned red. Then, without warning, she threw herself forward and hugged him tightly. Zhanrui blinked in surprise. Meanwhile, inside Lianhua's head, everything exploded emotionally. I'm so happy. Tears welled in her eyes instantly. This is too much. She buried her face against his chest. Why is his heart beating so fast too? Zhanrui laughed softly this time. A real laugh. Warm and helpless. Then slowly, his arms wrapped around her securely, holding her close, as though he never intended to let go again. Lianhua felt her heart ache from happiness. No war. No tragedy. No lonely ending. Only warmth. Only peace. Only him. After a long moment, Zhanrui gently lifted her chin. Lianhua looked up at him with watery eyes. Their gazes met beneath the moonlight. And for once, her thoughts went completely blank. Because he was looking at her so gently, so lovingly, that even her chaotic mind stopped working. Then, Zhanrui lowered his head slightly and kissed her forehead softly. Everything combusted instantly. I'm going to die. Her knees weakened immediately. This is too much happiness. Zhanrui held her carefully as she nearly lost balance from emotional overload. His forehead rested lightly against hers afterward. And quietly, with warmth only meant for her, he whispered, Lianhua. Her heart melted completely. I will protect this life with you. The wind stirred softly through the palace garden. The lotus flowers drifted peacefully beneath the moon. And somewhere far away, the original story that once doomed them all had long since faded. Because this time, the background character chose happiness, and unknowingly, changed everyone's fate along with her own. The end.